Yeah, so first of all, I'm here with Bertrand, Christian, and Anna, which are who are people that are working in Value Instrument, which is a project about building a currency, a system that would allow for exchange of goods and services, but that has a very precise design, monetary design, and also they are working in a kind of user interface for the app, which can be very useful for people to grasp the idea behind the design of the currency. And also because I guess I can ask them, can you tell me what is the first motivation behind starting the project of Value Instrument?
I think I should briefly start because back in the days, I ran a co-working space together with a bunch of good friends of mine in Berlin. And already in 2013, we had an initiative to try to find out whether we can build a currency for such co-working space. The co-working space was always sort of in financial difficulties, and so we needed to print our own money. No, we wanted to find out a way to harness also the amazing amount of activity that was happening in the building, and give something to the users to increase or to bootstrap their ideas. Because everyone always complained there was no money. A few years later, the Ethereum DAO, the DAO, was released, and that inspired me also to try and figure out whether such system can be used in the context of such physical building. And I called for a workshop between co-working space owners and technology people and community people such as Anna. And it was a really interesting workshop. And we were luckily joined by an Ethereum specialist in this workshop. And so following the workshop, we met up and we said, how should we design a token that drives such network? And suddenly in this, literally over a coffee in a cafe, there were so many questions and so many problems to solve that we were like, this is a bit more complicated. And so this is when Anna came also back into this conversation, and we were essentially three people playing a game using pasta, like literally like little pasta. And we were exchanging pasta and trying to find out how the monetary flow would be in such a network. If you also give money out to people in certain moments and stuff like that. And on that evening, actually, I remember it very well. This evening was very crucial that we suddenly came up with this system. And by chance, or I don't know why, but 2 weeks later, about 2 weeks later, Mark Griffiths came into the door of the co-working space, being an expert in smart contract writing. And so I got to talk to him, and yeah, in a very short amount of time, we had this system ready to go. Then for a few years, nothing happened. And then in 2018, we started working on a user interface, and yeah, that's how it started.
Okay, so Anna, do you want to complement the explanation of Christian?
Yeah, one thing what was actually special was the demurrage, how to get the demurrage on a smart contract, or how to manage this, to provide this as an option for people to choose in their design, in their currency design. So, and Mark Griffiths, he helped a lot to manage this.
Very interesting. So I guess your idea, which I want you to, maybe Bertrand can explain me a little bit what it's the current design of the currency that you choose, but I guess it has demurrage, right? Yeah. So
I think Christian can maybe explain more about the design, because me, I have help between the connection between the front end and the smart contract. Because
okay.
When, as explained Christian, first there was a smart contract, then the design of front end, but it was missing the connection between the front end and the smart contract. So I have
So
more help on this.
in order to have a web page working or something, right? No?
Yeah, I mean, because at the beginning it was a front end that was connecting to a centralized database, and which was simulating the function of the smart contract, and then help connecting both components, connecting directly the front end to the function of the smart contract instead of using the centralized database.
I understand. So I guess also that the currency relies on blockchain technology and on a smart contract running on what
Ethereum.
In Ethereum.
Yeah, Ethereum.
Okay. So maybe Christian, can you explain me more precisely what is the monetary design that you came up in that cafe?
Yeah, okay.
No, go on, Anna. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to say it's actually a step further that we figured out that actually every group want to have their own, see their own thoughts in their own project, their own governance, their own design. They have an idea in mind that they created together, and they want to try it out and experiment it. And this was also one trigger for us. How might we solve this problem that people can design their own currency more easily without this deep technical knowledge, as many communities face right now? So the need is there, but the knowledge is not there, or the skills are not there, or resources are not there to realize it. So, and that was actually the opportunity we had tap into.
Yeah, so you allow some degrees of freedom in order to for everybody to kind of design the currency. I would like to know what are these design freedom that they are allowed to change.
Yeah.
Pretty much everything about the currency they can change by deciding in the beginning who controls the currency. That can be in the very beginning of a network or in the experimentation phase. It's totally fine for it to be a small group of people who have access to the keys to control this. Later on, it can be changed to other structures, multi-signature structures, or maybe a decentralized autonomous organization controlling the monetary mechanisms. So it can be a gradual progression from having no knowledge and starting very small to a very complicated technical setup. And going to the very basics of the monetary idea, we came up with essentially 4 settings that a token can have. The first setting is that members that join the network, they get an amount of tokens in any period. So you can say, I want 10 tokens per day to be given to each member, maybe 100 tokens a month. This is one of the settings you can choose. This is great because it means that depending on which country you are in, you might have a completely different amount that people feel confident with. Today I'm calling in from Budapest. So €1 is 350 forint. So people here have a totally different way of looking at the numbers. So by giving people the freedom to design that, that's already a big step towards better adoption in a certain community that might be in a different country.
So they could, for example, give the people, agree to give 10 euros of value per day, but maybe in different numbers. If you are in Budapest, it could be 100 or 300 something, and if you are in France, it's another different quantity.
Exactly. Depending on the local habit of how numbers are typically dealt with.
Yeah, I guess that's a very important feature of a currency that is very easy to use. We use a reference of value. It's the normal currency, so it's good to have an easy exchange rate for people to put the prices right.
Yeah, that essentially you don't need an exchange rate in your if you're a community designing your own currency in a certain country, you would probably choose a similar thing to what is already in the country, given that it's half decent stable. I mean, people who deal a lot with money, they understand the concept that it's just a number, but for some people it's a bit more difficult to abstract this away from the product they buy. It doesn't essentially matter whether I pay 1,000 for a Snickers or 1 for a Snickers.
Yes.
But people need that kind of relationship that they're used to. So that's rule number 1. You can design whatever you need for your community. Rule number 2 is that the currency burns in the account if it's not used. So you get 100, let's say, per day, but if you don't use it, then there is a lifetime attached to this amount of money, or sorry, this amount of currency, and it diminishes in your account over time if you don't transfer it to somebody else. That's the second rule. Now, in this rule, you also have all the different settings. You can actually say, I want it to be burned within a month, maybe within a day, or I want to have it burned within 100 years, which essentially doesn't mean it burns. So there's edge cases in this setting where you can make it a normal token. Just set it to 500 years and it will live forever. So that's the second setting. And the third setting is that, or the third rule is that if I transfer money to somebody else, the lifetime of that amount that I transferred renews in the account of the other person. So they always receive an amount that has fresh value, because it would be really complicated if I received money for a service that I gave that is only worth half of its lifetime. Then it's really complicated to deal with that. So the fourth rule is a security mechanism where, of course, you could just constantly transfer money back and forth between accounts in order to regain the lifetime. And so we are putting a percentage that you can set up individually also for each network. We call it a security mechanism, or a fee that burns on top of the amount that you spend. So if I want to transfer 100 to Anna, then I also on top have a sort of a fee to pay, a payment fee. And that should be between 33 and 50%. It's quite high. The reason being is that we do allow for this transfer between people to happen a few times. We understand that this can happen, but we don't really bother too much, because after 3 transfers, the amount of money will in fees will be the same as the money transferred. So it's a bit complicated. In reality, our experiments have shown that it's fine with about 33 to 40% fee. You don't really notice it in the actual transferring, because you, at the same time, you get your basic income every day or every month. So it's kind of financed, the fee is financed with what you're getting also. It's a bit difficult to grasp in the actual day-to-day workings of the currency. It's not really that much felt. By the way, here in Hungary, the VAT is 30%. So it's, you know, it's
so
similar.
if I understand it correctly, you kind of make way for basic incomes kind of designs, as you can choose to give everybody an amount per day or per month or whatever. Also, you encourage spending, not hoarding the currency, right? That's another very, very important question that they can choose to incorporate in their design. In order to encourage more spending, also you each time that somebody pays for something, the currency regains 100% the lifetime of the currency, right? And in order not to allow for gaming the system, if two people exchange between them more, in order just to not to lose the
Lifetime.
The demurrage. I think that is the demurrage. You put a fee in order to avoid unreal transactions. Yeah, but I don't understand if the demurrage is a percentage of the money that is little by little going down, or if some time happens the money disappears completely.
Technically, the demurrage is calculated on each individual account. Once, in the moment you make a transfer to a person, then your account gets updated as to how much time has passed. And then it just says, okay, the amount of money that you did have decayed because, how can I explain easily? So you start with 100, and now 10 days later, you have, let's say, 90. In the moment you make this transfer 10 days later and basically it calculates the amount of time passed, diminishes your account and transfers the money. If you get new money from somebody who transfers it to you, then the account calculates the amount of money that was burned, but then you get fresh money, sort of thing. And then that fresh money also prolongs the total lifetime of the account. Like you have old money plus fresh money equals new lifetime of X. We don't know, depends. It's the mathematics.
It is a mean between the old money and the new one.
Exactly.
The lifetime.
Yeah.
A ponderate mean, I don't know in English, but if you have a lot of old money, it weights more the lifetime than the new one, I guess.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
And it is calculated each time that a transaction is made. You can see your account as not changing, but the moment you make a transaction, it does the calculation and it decreases the...
Yeah, that's where the user interface comes in, because on the blockchain, like the number written into the ledger, whether it's a blockchain or an Excel sheet, whatever, is always stays fixed, even the time passes. So the user interface that we programmed, that calculates the theoretical happening for each moment. Like it tells you how much money you have, as if you was going to do a transfer in that moment.
So in order not to make false ideas about how much money people has in their account, they already can check how much time it passed and tell them the real amount, not the amount in the block, which is the old one, but the real.
Yeah, it's simply because it would be very expensive to update it every time. The computational power would cost too much to update it in the blockchain every time.
Okay, I have a question maybe for Bertrand. It's good because I don't know what the smart contract really does. I don't know if all this code is in the smart contract or the smart contract is only between different different currencies in the system.
No, everything described by Christian is coded in the smart contract. But only at every transaction, because it's only a new transaction that triggers all the computation, and that's why it's good that is now also displayed in the front end. It's calculating in the front end, because at the beginning we just display the balance that is in the blockchain, and that's when we tried. It was there was a big difference between before making the transaction and after making the transaction, because it updates depending on how many times, how long you have waited to make the new transaction. It was not user friendly, because it's shown you that you have lost very much just because you have waited so long to make a new transaction. So
exactly, you had 100, but they were not real. They were 100 a year ago that you made your account and forgot.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
So,
however, I might want to add here one important factor is that if the network chooses to give people a regular payout, that regular payout has new value. So, or a new refreshed full lifetime. And so at some point, the account just stops, like it, the amount you get and the amount you burn and the lifetime you have stays the same, because of the new fresh coming in and the old going out. So
yeah,
it doesn't
I've seen
matter.
a very good, very beautiful graph showing that all the accounts go into the same stable value if they are not used, which I think is also very interesting. And maybe Anna can, why the idea to create a platform to make different currencies, and are they easily interchangeable between them, or they are independent currencies?
Of what people want to experiment with, and to exchange currencies itself. It's theoretically it's possible, but then I guess you need to be a bank or work together with a bank, or there's also some other legal framework we might use. We are working on it, and we think maybe in some months we have some news about it. Yeah, that's it.
You were unfortunately interrupting in the beginning.
Oh, the question was, yeah, you can design different currencies in like you need, or to start with, to experiment with your network and to exchange it with other currencies, theoretically possible. We talked a lot about this, but then you also need to talk to the BaFin. You need to become a bank or use another legal framework to make this possible.
Yeah, I understand. It's maybe easier to allow your users to do whatever they want without intermediation and not have to worry about legal stuff, maybe.
Yeah, but also it's, I can imagine if you have a front end where you have streams of different currencies into the front end to display them, and you use them separately and not exchange them, but maybe your electricity you pay with this currency, or the food you pay with this currency, and so on, then actually you don't have this problem, I think.
Yeah, I'm also very interested in terms of governance. How much space do you? Yeah, I know. Christian answered it before. Like each community could make the decision making as complex as it want, right? And
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
so these parameters that we discussed earlier could be changed over time.
Yes, we are living, we should, at the moment, it's important to be a learning society. As we see with our coronavirus, we need to adapt to certain circumstances. And what is happening actually at the moment is that we rely on the national currency, on the fiat currency, of the value of the euro or of the dollar or whatever, wherever you live. And to have a complementary currency in your village, which maybe has food chain, supply chains and everything, is actually a little bit going on in the village. And for this, as you know, in your city or in your community, Mario, yeah, it's super possible to use a complementary currency then for this kind of activities, social activities, and have also then a stable currency. And if something is not working, you just discuss it and make a decision and then change it.
Yeah, I think that's super important, and it really gets me into this project, because I think like zero governance can has its benefits. It doesn't require time spending on this, but I think it's very important, as reality is complex and always changing, and having a kind of constant value of the currency over time, which I think is also very, very important. I am not very in favor of currencies that increase their value over time, because they incentivize hoarding and speculation, and they are not useful for normal people because the volatility and so. But also for me, it's not also very good to have a currency that decreases too much in value, because more often than we would like are the users that put the more value into the more utility to the currency, that back the currency with good products and services that have a lot of demand. Those end up accumulating too much of the currency, and they suffer the most the demurrage. So I think it isn't always fair.
Yes, but I think also it's a question of your society or your community you're working with. Is actually, if just one person can do the job or do the service or make the product, then it's a question, why not share it? Why not show other people how to do it if there is a need of, for example, and for me, it's a really not the currency so much the problem, but more how we shape with this feedback, actually, how do we shape our society?
Yeah, I would like to add to this thought that Anna gave, like that it's not so much about the money, it's about what is being created with the money. That should be more important. May it be an asset, or may it be knowledge increased, which is a big asset. It's more like a non-tangible asset, a social capital. So these are the things that we hope to give a tool to increase this kind of activity and run it completely complementary to existing big currencies. Like it could be living in parallel to euros and bitcoins and whatever is out there, and gold and whatnot. People want whatever people want as a store of value. But the currencies we propose with the system that we designed, they have mainly a different purpose. They have a complementary purpose. where it's it's momentarily important. Like the money and the value, the flow of money in the network is more momentarily important. It's not so much about hoarding. You cannot hoard it at all. And so it's more about what is being created with this activity. And it's an accounting mechanism for the activity, if you get what I mean.
Yes. And and the coaching itself, I mean, it's easy to do maybe with 20 people or 40 people, but if you're more people or want to include more people, or want to track your activities a little bit more, not to tracking to use this data for another purpose, but also to just have a feedback loop, a feedback loop which is true. So you have an idea of what is actually happening, where the money is flowing, and you can ask new questions in the community. Why is it so? Why actually these people have so much income and velocity and this group not? So do we need to change our education system? Should we give more opportunities to these groups? Or this are all questions we don't ask so much if we have an anonymous exchange thing like a euro or
so
on the other side, another thought that comes to mind is what Anna just also said. There's another side to it, which is you can gate fence. So on one hand, you can create new little economies, but you can also gate fence certain things that you might want to have more insights into or more control over, that you're not quite confident in your community, or let's say you're a city and you don't really want to allocate, €1 million to a certain activity yet. You are kind of unsure how people will use the money and whether it's good or not. You can create a complementary token. You can create virtual money and inject it into the network, and then back it up and say, okay, like we're gonna back this system up with dollars or euro, but we're using a virtual token to create the economy around what's supposed to happen. Let's say cleaning up the streets. Yeah, it's just an example. Or cleaning up the parks of all plastic. So instead of just throwing dollars or euros at it straight away that are kind of hard to gain, you virtualize this activity into a token that might be valuable for 2 years. You give it a lifetime, which you set up, and then you have the activity running, but you back it up with real money, and you make it, for example, a tax. People can reclaim this money after a certain period of time. Do you understand what I mean? Like, so you put a virtual token in a system, the system runs, and then after a year or after 2 years or after 5 years, people can say, okay, I now have this token, I want to redeem it for real euros. So you basically, you can see how well your activity ran and whether it was adopted well, and then you actually give this as a tax incentive, or there's different ways of redeeming then these tokens. That's this is a gate fencing of activities versus creating a new activities or replacing activities that are already running on euros.
Yeah. So in order to recap the things that you said, that I hope I understood. First of all, it's the question about putting more attention to what is the real value exchange in the network, not so much in the money itself, but thinking all the time about what is the kind of value that could be flowing here and isn't, because we don't have enough euros. That would be the point. And also, I think that you mentioned 2 other things, and you said that it's very interesting to gather the data. These tools allow communities to see how we relate to each other. We have we create some data about exchanges, and we can use that in order to further improve our relations between each other, which I think is very, very interesting too. And all complementary currencies can serve that mean very well. And the last thing that I think I got you, Christian, you mentioned that it's not only about replacing the normal money in for some uses, but also to every time that there is a need and a capacity untapped to make that need happen, it's important to create new money, to have a new if the I think what you meant was that if the town hall, the mayor of the city wants something to happen, instead of spending euros that are very scarce in order to do this, he could create a currency, make it earned by doing a kind of work or something, and this currency then can flow in the town, increasing the benefits of the action, and later, maybe in 2 years, it can be redeemed. In this way, the town hall is financing itself, their activities, and also creating
exactly
wealth.
Yeah. It's a bit more complicated, like, of course there's details, but that would be the concept. Yes.
And now I'm very interested on diving deeper into why did you find out that these 4 key elements were the key for every kind of currency? Because I, for example, have an idea, which is, can I create money for one user, for some users, and not for others? Could that be done, or why did you not allow that question to be implemented?
That to me seemed like 2 questions that you asked now.
Maybe, I don't know.
But the first one was really cool. I thank you for it. And I would like Anna to try to answer it, why we came up with these 4 rules. That was very bizarre, actually.
Yeah, I don't know if I can bring it together, but it was actually like imitating nature, and was more like an apple tree, so to say. An apple tree get energy from the air, from the sun, and so on, and creates apple out of itself, because that is how the tree what the tree is doing. And then if the apples are not picked up to make marmalade or so, they just rot on the tree and get back to the soil. And then the nature is doing its thing and new apples coming up. And that's actually, the circle of nature. And if you don't, if you pick the apple and don't use it, make marmalade or process it somehow, then it always goes back to nowadays to trash, but better to put it on the compost, of course. Have more, it's kind of regenerative currency, actually. That was the idea behind.
So you wanted to avoid that it serves as a store of value, I guess.
Yeah, because it's a complementary currency, and it's, you, of course, a lifetime can be 100 years. That's also possible if you want to have a lifetime of 100 years or 500, if you choose so.
I would like to make this a bit more precise. The value instrument currency allows for people to try to find the right balance between longevity and decay, because we don't know exactly what is the right thing. It's a matter of designing it together with the network and what is happening in the network and getting user feedback. I can give you interesting feedback about this. We already tried it in our first user interface, and it's quite interesting. Some people say that, oh, I don't care if I have the money in 4 months, And I, for myself, I say, well, I think I kind of want to have it for a year and a half. I need a bit of planning time. Like if I earn some money now, I kind of want to make sure that I do have it, you know, maybe for like a year or two. So it really is quite interesting to experiment with that. And the money as a store of value, I think, is important for a momentary period of time. There must be a certain period of time where money is a good store of value, because otherwise it's a kind of a crap accounting mechanism. The accounting wouldn't work if it decays too fast. But the accounting also doesn't work if it stays forever. So it's like somewhere in this range that we need to find out what the store of value, or how long it should be a store of value.
Or as some other people or communities are also thinking of, to have different currencies for different purposes running, circulating. So could be also a longer lifetime and shorter lifetime for food, for example, because it's not needed to have a 500-year lifetime for fresh fruit, fruits and vegetables.
Yeah, I think that is very interesting of your approach, that it allows for a lot of freedom, which in the design. And also, for example, I think it's at the beginning of a currency, it's very important to put a long lifetime for the currency, because the community is small, it's hard to find a useful way to spend the currency, and we have to protect those that first back the value of the currency, that they have to feel safe somehow. But if the network grows, then it's more useful to have a lifetime and to have some redistributing mechanisms that can create more abundance at the end. And yeah, I think that is very, very interesting. And also they make it easy for everybody to make their own currency in their own terms for their own community, and have it there, the tool.
Yeah,
Exactly. And maybe also just make it fun. You know,
Yeah.
just don't take it so bloody serious right from the beginning. Like Bitcoin is a very serious thing now. But in the beginning it wasn't. You know, people really forgot that, you know, in the beginning people were like, oh, you know, I'm just gonna mine this, and here I have 20,000 Bitcoin and I don't care about them. So, you know, it needs time, and it can just be a fun thing to do. You know?
But one thing is also, for example, you live in a district and there's plastic flying around and there's trash in the streets and in the parks, and some groups a group says, oh, that's so ugly, nobody is taking it away, and then you can create a pool so people don't know what to do with the money can donate it to a pool, so to say, and people who want to do something, they can of course use the tokens to do the job. It could be also some activity. So the solution is don't see it only in the currencies. The solution is also in the relationships.
But so I agree with you. But in this case, with the token, what could be the use for the token once you earn it by doing something good for the community?
Yeah, you can use it for something else, because there's always a little activity. If the community is too small, then you're right. Yeah, but if you have, for example, as you're also a teacher for kids and help them with their homework, there's always a need of somebody teaching something, a language, a guitar playing, helping with math, whatever. And especially maybe for teenagers or so on, it's you can create something.
And
Yes.
this, I would like to say here, the user interface comes in like massively. Like this is a user interface question. And our user interface takes care of two things mainly. The sign up needs to be really easy and intuitive, that you can become part of the system and place your idea in the system. And on the contrary, the transaction flow has to be really easy and obvious also. So that could help to increase the amount of services and things offered. And so, for example, I'm very glad that Anna mentioned our idea for pools. We call it pools, but it's essentially like, imagine crowdfunding campaigns. Like one of our first applications that we did last year was allowing for people to set up crowdfunding campaigns. And it was so intuitive and so fast and so easy. It was really, as an experiment, it was a success. Of course, it didn't actually produce anything useful because it was a demo, but we could show that the flow of activity can be heavily increased by making a user interface that really allows for very quick onboarding and super quick interaction with different entities and players in the network that offer something, that want something, that need something. And so that's what we are creating, is a sort of a mix of, our user interface is a mix of Google Maps, eBay, and Kickstarter, all in one, tokenized.
It's interesting to me because here we have another Galician project that has this same vision, that if you put in the same app, in the same application, many different uses for the currency, like crowdfunding, online market, decision-making places, also they aim to do this, and maybe I can share with you later their prototypes. They are open source also. But they need funding now, so they are stuck.
We are not, the thing is with us is that, of course, we don't have any funding right now, and of course, funding would be good. But what I'm seeing is that, luckily, some of the contributors like Mark, Anna, and also myself, we have come incredibly fast forward with really cool things that are just basically written in very simple JavaScript, and you can get very far already. And so we are really excited to release the next version very soon.
I'm very excited too. But well, just in order to clarify, can you explain more about what did you take? Well, you already said a lot about the user interface and the creating the app, but maybe for other people, you can share how it was to start the app, or what things got out and got into the app. You know, if you can tell us a little bit what features do you have in your application, and what you don't.
Basically, also this is very flexible. So if a community wants to do an implementation with a currency, then they can choose what they need. Of course, there's always some core features you need to send funds, to receive funds, to have your to check your account and sign in and what have you. But this is also very flexible.
Yeah, so I think that you are building something very modular, and I'm more fixed in the, you do this and it's ended. And
no, imagine that. Imagine you have an app that allows for more apps to be added to it. So if a community is more focused on food, then they might have little extra menu items that are very much related to their food delivery or production network. Another network might be more driven by, a co-working network that I'm very familiar with might be more driven by technology, developers, and or maybe photographers, maybe web developers and all this. So then
Oh,
the user interface will change to reflect more of their needs, whereas other things stay the same, like the user interface allows for chatting, it allows for transferring of funds, and it probably has a map so people can find each other and stuff.
Okay,
and
because I think
also
sorry, yes.
also in the backend, like pChain, we can integrate the blockchain or the tool behind the storage, what people really want to use and experiment with.
Yeah, for me it's confusing because I see that you are creating a technology that can be used for everyone, but you also have a currency, which is a project of a more concrete one.
Yeah, imagine like we kind of started to compare our project with WordPress. We kind of call it the WordPress for crypto. So whilst you can download WordPress for yourself and you can create all kinds of different things with it using plugins, you can also use WordPress.com, which gives you a set of pre-installed things. So we have also both. We can say, okay, here's the software, build with it what you like, add plugins, whatever you like, do your own token. But at the same time, we also build it for ourselves as a fixed platform where it's like, okay, this is what we offer for other people to use.
Very interesting. And now my last question would be that we were discussing these days in all the groups. I'm talking about currency design and stuff. What are the security or the if it's free to use the Ethereum network in order to implement the Bertrand? Maybe you can answer me this.
Yeah, that's why we have deployed it only on a testnet for now, because it's you can get a test ether using a faucet. So there is a public faucet where you can get some limited amount of ether to not be able to spam it, and with some faucets you need some verification of your humanity, so not be able to get too many ether, and to also, as said Anna, instead of being only on Ethereum, we have tried also to deploy on other Ethereum compatible blockchain like pChain, or it could be also deployed on TomoChain or other Ethereum compatible blockchain, to avoid the big cost of transaction on Ethereum. So there is a different what we call sidechain. So like XDAI is used to lower the cost of DAI transaction on Ethereum. So
yeah, this is something we need to solve still. Is what technology we use in order to bring the real dollar transaction costs down to an amount that can be maybe funded by the people themselves or a foundation or something, like where it's literally, I don't know, a thousandth of a penny or something of a transaction, because it can then become otherwise way too expensive. So yes, that is a problem that not just our project struggles with. There are other cool projects, shout out here to Circles and Mana and Dunider, of course. And Dunider is cool because they use their own blockchain. So they have their own, they don't need to bother about the transaction cost because their network actually supports itself. Yeah, so using public blockchains like Ethereum is super expensive. There are great new technologies coming up, so we hope to then leverage on those.
Cool. So I'm satisfied already. I don't want to do more questions. But I would like you to give some final thoughts and to recap a little bit whatever you may feel like you didn't have the chance to say earlier. So I don't know. Maybe Anna.
Yeah, well, some final thoughts. It's actually my wish is that we become learning societies where it's allowed to experiment also with new concepts, like new economic concepts. We were never allowed to do this before, so to say, and now we have the possibility with digital tools to do so, and to have a more fluid democracy. It might be also, there are a lot of projects out there which are going in this direction, and that's super interesting, I find. And also education in this field is super important, that more people have access to this knowledge and understand it from the beginning. Even with kids, I'm working on an app on top of Value Instrument, so to say, for families, for parents and kids. And they will also use a little token and so on. And it's interesting with the interviews I do. They are looking for privacy and security. It's not that they don't care, especially if they have kids. They care very, very much about what kind of apps the kids are using and so on. And also how to bring them into the world of crypto, what it actually is, and to make it accessible, as I said before. Not telling them what's going on, but do both. Have an easy access through a front end, but also providing, so to say, the first step into the world of this kind of technologies and what stands behind it and opportunities we have with it.
All right, thank you, Anna. Now, maybe Christian, do you want to say something?
I just want to thank you for this totally spontaneous call set up less than 24 hours ago. A great idea. I didn't know what to expect, and I thought you did a really amazing job of moderating it. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Mario.
You're welcome. I did my best, but it's not that much. Well, Bertrand, do you want to also say something?
Yeah, I think I will agree with Christian. Yeah, I did not know what to expect, but I expect also that it could become a new example of what they call now DeFi, decentralized finance. So being able to, as say Anna, to help people to experiment with their own currency and having more economic knowledge. It seems, from what I see, not a lot of people who was authorized or was incentive or was motivated to learn more about economy, and they are more kept in the ignorance of about money. So I like to see people, more people, joining the DeFi spirit and trying to find their own balance of how they can deal with the money philosophy, money concept.
I also want to thank you all for your amazing work. And I really agree that the best way to understand money and to regain our power over these issues is by having the possibility to experiment with it. And also, if the currency goes wrong, the state currency, having their alternatives in order not to completely stop the economic activity. So I thank you very much, all of you, for being here and sharing your thoughts.
Thank you, Mario.
Cool, thank you. I guess
You're welcome.
Stop that here then and say goodbye.
Yeah. Well, goodbye. Let's post it. Yeah.